if everyone would just say their name and if you represent some entity or anything that you'd like us to know. I'll go first just to break the ice. Rich Rotella, Community and Economic Development Director for the town of Bucksport.
Don White, citizen of the town of Bucksport.
Peter Fitzgerald, citizen of the town of Bucksport, and also I'm an electrical engineer.
Emily Fitzgerald, citizen.
Suzanne DePhillips, citizen of Bucksport and owner of Bucksport Trading Post.
Owner of what, excuse me?
Bucksport Trading Post.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Ralph Chapman, citizen.
Tracy Hare, citizen and town councilor of Bucksport.
Chris Johnson, citizen of Bucksport.
And this is our service provider team.
Debbie Grimick and
I'm Alan Kratz.
All right, and I'll turn it over to Alan for.
Well, this seems very formal to speak at a podium, but since there's no chair up there, I'll do it this way, if you don't mind. And I'll speak loudly because I know the acoustics are challenging, certainly for my ears, and that may be the same for some of you. So I'm delighted to be here again. Today is the first day of the extension of a contract, a 6-month extension of the contract that Debbie Grimmig and I have with the Community Resilience Partnership from the state of Maine. The Governor's Office of Policy Innovation in the Future was very pleased to extend our work so that we can help you as a committee and ultimately as a town council decide what you would like to do in terms of looking for additional funding for climate-related initiatives here in Bucksport. So I thought it would be helpful, because this is all about funding. Perhaps you'd like my perspective on the overview of federal and state funding. And I see, Tracy, you're nodding. I think that's very relevant to the work you're doing. And you and I think all of us who've been watching the news, reading the BDN, know that there's a lot of what should I say? The dynamics are very interesting. I'll say it that way. So let me talk about state funding first. And the program that the Community Resilience Partnership, as you know, is funded by the state. The money came from the legislature, so it's state funding, and that's good news given what's going on at the federal level, the uncertainty with federal funding. There will be a grant round for community action grants starting in May. I talked with Ashley Krulick last week, and this grant round will go forward. Ashley Krulick, K-R-U-L-I-C-K, is our liaison with the governor's office. And the grant round will open in May, will probably close in July. So we have a couple of months with you to be thinking about what projects would be good candidates for state funding. It has not been announced, the dollar amounts have not been announced. I'm assuming it will be like the last grant round, the most recent one, where towns could get $75,000 of no local match state funding for one of 72 strategies that comport with the Maine Climate Council's climate action plan. And I have a copy of those, and I think some of you have seen those. There may be additional activities that qualify for no local match funding. We'll see when the application period opens. So that's what towns can get. Towns that go in together can get up to $175,000, and that's happened in the past as well. So that's the state funding. The federal funding is, I guess I'll say about 3 things about that. NOAA provided $69 million to the state of Maine last July. You may remember there was a large award ceremony in Portland. Maine got $69 million from NOAA. As I said, this was one of the largest grants that came to any state for climate resilience work related to shorelines and waterfronts and all of that related activity. It was a huge win for the state of Maine. The money did come from the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. The Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act is one of the federal programs that is under scrutiny. And just to bring you up to date with the litigation on that, the state of Maine was one of 22 states and the District of Columbia that challenged the pause in federal funding for the Infrastructure Adaptation for the Investment and Jobs Act, for the IRA, Inflation Reduction Act, all of these programs that were suspended by the federal government at the end of January. So last Friday, a federal judge in Rhode Island enjoined any further suspension, ordered it to be restored. But yesterday, the Department of Justice filed an appeal to the Circuit Court in Boston, so the litigation will continue, and it's not clear whether the Circuit Court in Boston will issue a stay or will let the injunction remain in place. All of that's a developing situation. Why do I mention the federal funding? Because the federal funding is what, the $69 million, a large part of that will go to the Community Resilience Partnership for future grant rounds beyond this year. So the future is a little unclear, but we are, Debbie and I and our other clients, and I have other municipal clients, and what we're all doing, what we're advising and what we're doing is saying to our municipal clients, we will continue to do what we intend to do until we are told we cannot. There's a good reason. We know that the need exists for all of these projects. We know that it's important for us to be in the pipeline so that when funding does resume, we're ready, willing, and able to move ahead. We're not making up for lost time. There's also a good strategic reason for putting in applications and preparing plans, because as attorneys general look for evidence to take to the court and say this is an important project, these examples become part of that whole part of the support for further advocacy and litigation. So, yeah.
You might have just said this, are there other municipalities still moving forward as well with their projects?
Yes, I can, Debbie and I are service providers for Verona Island and also for Orland. So during the most recent grant round, the town of Orland submitted an application for, I think it was $57,000 to get a contract with the Hancock County Planning Commission to update its comprehensive plan. Verona Island's comprehensive plan has not been updated since 2006. I know, Peter, your father worked on getting, what was it, 2017, I think, here in Bucksport. So that was long overdue, and we will know at the end of the month when the awards are announced if Verona Island succeeded with that. That's a very exciting thing for them. Debbie and I met last week, and I met again today with folks in Orland. We met with the select board last week. They're very enthused about looking at what could be done in the way of further planning around the Orland Dam. That's not part of Alamoosic Lake. Silver Lake, Toddy Pond, it's separate from that, but it is a piece of infrastructure that could probably use some additional planning money and figuring out what the vulnerabilities are and how that could be addressed. So Debbie and I are continuing our conversations with the town of Orland on that. So that's, yeah, Don.
Just a question, you said this current round is safe, Alan? Is it safe with funding
Yes.
also?
Yeah, that's the word
The
we're getting.
state, and how much money is available? Has the state said how much money is available?
I don't know what the pot is that the state has
But
appropriated.
they have a pot.
Yeah. Mhm. And
Is exclusive of federal input, export, output, all that.
came from the legislature's general budget.
Thank you.
The budget that was approved last July, I believe. So, yeah, but as I say, you know, the governor's office was very excited about expanding, enhancing, and enlarging the program with federal funding. That's what's in question. So,
It's helpful clarification.
yeah, and it's a developing story. I mean, every day brings a new piece of news, so. Have I gone too quickly in that, or is that?
You haven't, but for the for the new folks, outside of the Text My Gov, which was one of the things that this committee was considering doing, and the town was already working on it behind the scenes and
Right.
implemented it prior to us. Could you talk to the other item that we had discussed and
Sure.
any update from the state?
Sure. The other program, that was emergency preparedness and making sure. So there was the other program that I know there was a great deal of interest about, working with the shelter and providing uninterruptible alternative power for the shelter at the church. So that this would be, and this, of course, is a great piece of public policy. It did not comport with the rules for the Community Resilience Partnership because the plan that was coming forward relied on a generator that used fossil fuel. And that is, under this program, something that the state does not favor. They want to have power provided in a green fashion, whether it's hydro or solar or some other fashion. So that's why that didn't go forward. But Ashley Krulik has said that she's very interested in working with you as a committee, with Debbie and me, with the town council, to get to a place where there is a project that A, meets a need, is a good candidate, and is ripe for Debbie and me to actually prepare the application. Don?
Was the church was also an issue because it was on a church as opposed to municipal owned building. Was that an issue that was raised?
Not as much of an issue because there are ways of bringing this in an ancillary fashion as long as the benefits would accrue to the public. It's not part of the church's theological or denominational
Okay,
issue.
so it's just the issue of the generator being fossil fueled on that particular issue that we have discussed
Right.
many
Right,
times.
so if there was some way of finding an alternative power source
Okay.
that was solar, we could go forward.
Or battery operated.
Or battery, yes, yes.
Because they use that in a lot of, generate or public safety,
Mhm.
is they have, generate battery backups. So
Right, and the question I think would be, I'm not an expert on that, that's where we need some additional expertise, but what's the power load, what's the power requirement for a shelter? And where would that be, what would this cost? And that can all be part of a planning grant to determine that.
What's the timeline for submission for this?
The application will open in May, I'm assuming early May, and typically they've had a 2-month window for people to get their, and these applications are very complicated. They want to know the justification, they want to know who in the community will be benefited, what the prospects are for success, what the prospects are for continuation after the project is complete. All of those good things that I think you know about from your work, what funders like to see. Ralph, yes.
Relative to the generator.
Yeah.
Because the governor's office of policy and innovation for the future did not answer the questions that I asked you to ask them, that you forwarded my email to them. I did talk to Ashley Krulik yesterday,
Okay.
and I specifically asked if the generator is fueled by biodiesel, for example, a non-fossil fuel, would that be okay? And the answer was no, it wouldn't be okay. She did not seem to be knowledgeable about the way biofuels are blended or not blended. There's a biofuel manufacturer in Portland. They provide what's called B20, which is 20% biofuel mixed with petroleum oil for replacing oil that you might purchase in your home for running your boiler or furnace. But they also supply other blends, including a 99.9% blend. Which isn't a blend. It's a. But she did reiterate the use of batteries supply, and this is where policy people don't always follow the science, which is to say that if you charge the battery with the standard offer electricity from the utility, you're getting some of that energy from green sources, you're getting some of that energy from fossil fuel sources. And so that's an example of how, as we move along, it will be important to be cognizant of the fact that the policy doesn't always follow the science. Now, the other thing, though, is that there doesn't seem to, the office has the decision-making power over what's eligible and what isn't. but it doesn't seem as though they're following any written documents. In other words, they make their decisions, but they seem to be ad hoc decisions because there is no documentation of the government-owned building requirement or the non-fossil fuel component and so forth. I mean, there's a reason, but there's no documentation.
It's more of the opinion of whoever is in charge at the time.
Well, yes, and it's Ashley, and that's.
Is any of it though grandfathered under sort of, you know how like it's taxpayer money that comes out of the legislature and that in and of itself can't be given to like faith-based work
No,
and things
that-
like, it's not under that umbrella organically, or this is something different?
The enabling legislation is silent on the details. It provides authorization for the state agency to make those decisions.
I would also add that it's more than Ashley. She's reports to Brian Ambrette, who works with Sarah Curran, who's the governor's chief climate officer. Hannah Pingree is head of the Office of Policy Innovation and Future. And frankly, the way I've observed it, they take their cues. They come to a collective decision, and ultimately it's the governor. So it's more than one person making any unitary or unilateral decision.
I was just making the point that if there's nothing written, then people are just sitting around saying, well, that's this or that's that, and there's not like a written out policy that says it can't be, a generator that's run by fossil fuels.
So I would just say that yes. The other thing one looks at is what has been the consistent course of dealing that this office has done through now 5 grant rounds. I mean, that's just as in law, one can look at
Precedent.
case law as well as statutes. There's that evidentiary basis for it being a consistent course of dealing, equal treatment with all applicants coming forward.
So I have a question, because they were looking at, everyone is questioning about it being at the church, and my background's in public safety. And a lot of times when they have shelters, they're either at churches or they're at schools. That's generally the two places. And so did anyone look at any of the schools, and do they already have generators that?
Go ahead, Don.
It's currently at the school, and there's a conflict when, if the kids are in school and us needing the space as well. There was
Yeah,
it wasn't an easy, it's currently at the school.
that's why the church became such an appealing
Yeah.
place. Don?
To welcome our new members. We have spent a long time here, and the pervading issue that we had talked about, at least, was this shelter issue based at the church. And that became, the genesis of that was the conversations that have had between Reverend Peter Remick and Chief Sean Gagan. That was their idea of could we do this, and we picked it up from that. So, and it's been one of the things that we have discussed quite at length sitting here. So when we've come to, Alan has answered a couple of questions about what may or may not be possible with that, but it's one of those. So that's where it started, and that's what has taken a lot of our time at this point, in my opinion. So not that it needs to take more, but it's there. It's still, and it appears to be still there.
Yeah, no, the policy has not changed, the implementation has not changed. We can continue to discuss it, it's fine.
I have another question. I'm sorry. I'm trying to get up to speed.
Thank you,
So
Susan.
I think that a shelter is great, because that's one of the things that I think is extremely necessary for, obviously, what you all agree. So have we looked at other towns or cities around Maine who have set up a shelter utilizing this grant fund and seeing what they used for generators, or how they kind of circumvented have we looked at any of that? Because we don't have to reinvent the wheel. We should be looking.
I think previously it was mentioned that you had mentioned that particular, I think that question was asked prior, that there wasn't necessarily a similar project.
But I'm glad
this
Suzanne raised it
specific
because I
grant.
think it requires double checking.
I think it's a great idea.
And then it doesn't necessarily have to be grant. You can look at other shelters. They might already be using, green, they might be green. And thinking about this, I may have a resource that I can tap into, somebody who builds green buildings, like corporate buildings. This is somebody I work with in Florida that may I can maybe contact them, get some information on maybe some generators or how they utilize, those type of.
So I hear three things as tasks. One, I'd like to follow up on Ralph's point. And Ralph, I'd be very interested in knowing more about the composition of these blended fuels. And I think that's science that that we can take back to the governor's office. May not change the decision, but I think in the spirit of us following facts and science, that might be helpful. So if you can provide a memo on that, that'd be very helpful. Suzanne, I think that I appreciate, and Emily, you pointed out that we have looked at this question before, but I think it's always good to ask again. Let's find out if there have been other uses of community action grants from this program for shelters. And Suzanne, I really value your coming up with some further thinking about what type of green battery supply or green power could be applied to the situation that we know would work really well at the church because the school is already occupied, or there's that conflict of use.
Okay.
So I think those are three things that can help move. Peter.
Do we have a duration we're looking for?
Duration of the grant?
Like how long it can operate the heat without power?
Well, that's a good example. We'd have to do that due diligence, as I mentioned before. What's the power demand? What's the capacity of whatever is being supplied? How long does it have to run? Under what conditions? And you who have public safety background, we've had some of those discussions with Chief Gagan and Andrew Sankey from the Hancock County Emergency Management. That's all part of what would go into a grant application, saying, this is what we've studied, this is what the needs are, this is how they can be met, and this is why we're applying for funding. That's when that would come into play, Peter.
Yeah. When we just to give you some update on this idea, we had unofficially met, organically met with Healthy Acadia, so we had checked the box of like a community service agency helping sort of reach very vulnerable people, checked in with public safety and emergency management as far as technical terms for the building, because it's very important not to call it a shelter.
Right.
Because then you have
refuge.
some tenancy situations happening. So there's another term that we'll have to get used to using. But so all of that's sort of been backfilled. I think if we got to a point of like outsourcing the professional assessment piece, like how long do we need it, what the rest of it is, I think that's a really good place.
So again, I agree with you. So we would set up, so I was a 911 director. And so we would set up, wasn't part of, I assisted with shelter, but they would be temporary emergency shelters. So it's not a shelter like with housing, it's an emergency, temporary emergency shelters that are very specific. And they have to sometimes also service, whether you have to consider, and this is something we would consider, or you might have already done, what type of shelter? Do they, do they take children? Do they take pets? Do they take people with healthcare issues that may need special oxygen? Because that all goes into the type of power load that is necessary for a generator, right? So what equipment is being set up, because a lot of times they're just putting cots down and then they're...
Who assesses that type of thing, do you know?
Yeah, so you can get, generator companies come in, so we would do a power load. So in the 911 center, you did a monthly power load. Actually, the building, you would do a monthly power load for the generators. So you keep them. So those are things that you would have to maintain when you have any type of facility that is going to require an emergency. Like you can't wait till an emergency and then realize nothing's working.
Yeah.
So you just do a power load test, and then whoever's maintaining that, somebody in maintenance might just go and they just flip a switch and it's a 2-minute check. But those are things that you just have to consider as we're writing this grant. I think it's, it is complicated, but it's so worth it because it impacts everybody in the town. You don't know what's gonna happen, whether it's a snowstorm or whether it's a flood or whether there's a massive, God forbid, like there's a fire or something like that. You wanna have a place for people to go. But you have to consider all of those things. And if they look at the church, they're gonna have some of this information already. They already know, like, you can contact the, CMP, whoever, and they can kind of start getting that information. And then there's, I'm not a technical person, but I've been involved in things like this, and I know what I had to do, and I've set up centers. So, but I do think that, just kind of, I'm never about I don't want to reinvent the wheel.
Right,
I want to take someone who's done it right, and it doesn't even have to be in the state of Maine.
Yeah.
And just say, hey, what was required to set this up in a green fashion. And so I am going to reach out to their friends or their acquaintances, and I know that they build green buildings, and maybe they can direct us, at least get some information. And then if you, I guess, are going to look to see if there's any other,
I am.
yeah. So,
And your point is smart to not, I know people in New Hampshire I can talk to in Vermont, so.
Yeah.
Cold northern states.
Yes, that's what you want.
Rich?
If I can make a suggestion, because we spent a lot of time on this, and I think we should have a backup plan as well of a second item that maybe anyone's researched, or if folks haven't, if it's something that maybe both of these folks join us from the Conservation Committee, or anything else that anyone else has. But I think a lot of people have tasks that can continue to make that go forward. But if we have either a backup or a joint project, good to get started on that. But I
Yeah.
don't want to
No,
dominate
that's,
this.
I think that's, look, we're halfway through the hour, and I think that's a very appropriate segue for gathering thoughts of other projects or other needs that, Don?
I'd just like to, our last meeting, I just want some continuity to these meetings for myself. We had talked about electing a chair, which we had agreed upon.
Okay.
We're now halfway through our next meeting, that I would like to bring that to at least a discussion point again. I think a citizens group needs a chair, and we've not had one. We've had help from our state friends, but we as citizens have not been able to have we just kind of does this. We said, and I thought we had consensus that we were going to talk about a chair or elect a chair tonight. So I would like to bring that to the table.
You are 100% correct, and I apologize. That's right. And with that being said, if everyone's okay, I'd like to nominate Tracy here.
I would totally second that, and I also want to add to the pot my echoing of what I said last time, the person that has been doing a lot of chair jobs already.
That's the reason why he would like to not do that, but
I would have nominated Ralph just because of his expertise. And just because I'm already a counselor and more citizen driven to have somebody, if you would accept the nomination.
I would second it if you would accept.
I'd accept it. If
And
It's
my
okay
only
with the
reason,
committee.
not to offend anyone, I think citizen input's so important, and I've got a big voice already, and so I'll just be.
I'm willing to, I like to work on consensus basis, so I would not be willing if someone on the committee had a problem with my being the chair, then I wouldn't want to be, but invite anyone to speak if.
Well, I mean, we have a nomination and we have a second. How do we all in favor without a chair?
All right, we have a nomination on the floor for Ralph. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? You guys get to vote.
Give your hand up for opposed.
Oh.
We can swap seats next meeting.
I have a request too, based upon that, thank you for trying to do that, and thank the group. I would really like to see, in conjunction with an organization like that, an agenda available before the meeting. that to me is critical, to have an agenda and have great, your notes have been wonderful. I really appreciate all you've done. To have an agenda for me is really important. Even if the agenda says there's nothing on the agenda, that's fine, I'll accept that too. But for me, it's really important to be able to track these meetings. Rich has opened up the Google Drive for me. I've spent hours going through every possible thing I can. I've also been involved with other groups right now. And the Bucksport Bay Healthy Communities Coalition's got a brochure that they're developing and ready to bring out based upon these very issues of disaster preparedness and all those kind of things. So is this the group, we're doing similar small things with the Conservation Committee, trying to get that thing, there's some resolve in that as well. But this is a great opportunity, and I really appreciate that organization, because I agree with Dawn that that's really important to have that.
So Chris, thank you for all the research and the due diligence you've done coming into the committee. And we will work with your newly elected chair. Debbie and I will make sure that you have an agenda for the next meeting.
Thank you for your presentations.
Sure.
And speaking to that question, if committee members have suggestions for agenda items, I'd be happy to hear them.
Sorry about that.
And then, and so there's a quick question of, does someone in the room have everyone's email here? I don't have everyone's email.
I will make sure you have it.
There is a sheet available, but it doesn't have the latest updates.
The latest updates.
I checked
Okay.
it today.
Thank you.
If I have everyone's email, I will email you my email so that, which is easy enough to remember. It's my name at zoho.com, but Ralph Chapman at zoho.com. I will email that to you.
I was gonna say to your question, or maybe you're gonna bring it up, that having a, a backup plan.
Yeah, that's where I was headed.
Yeah, I knew. I'm all about plan A, plan B, plan C. So I'm gonna say something that we're working on in the Conservation Committee, and we know that it definitely, I think, falls in line with the, with this committee, is there, we have a situation with the emerald ash borer. And then, what it's money that the town is gonna have to consider and spend to make sure that these trees that are the potential for the impact on Main Street, but also throughout the town, and how are we gonna mitigate it? Some of them can be treated, but it's expensive, from what we know, about $250 a tree. And then also people who have properties, how are we going to assist them if, they have a property full of these trees, and it can be extremely expensive. So that could be something that maybe falls in line with this, because we talk about funding and how we're going to do it, and we're coming up with a plan, just to have a plan. And I always recommend a business case for everything that you do. So that's what you're talking about, is having a business case even for the grant, to say,
Is there a particular species of tree that this?
ash. It's the
Just
ash
ash,
tree,
okay.
and it's an emerald ash borer, and it's a bug, I guess. And it's very and it's obviously invasive. So it comes in, and it's been impacting coming up, through all of the states. It's now in Maine, and it's gonna basically, it bores into the ash tree, and then they are killed, and then you can't, it can impact a lot of things. The lumber, how are you going to
Safety as well.
safety, right? Because it could just fall over. So it's, we have to figure out a plan. A lot of states are dealing with this, and other parts, I think more south of us. I think it's in south of us right now. But
The zone is actually Waldo and Arlington. Anything that way the emerald ash borer, anything cut that's ash stays there.
Yeah.
We're still outside the zone, but it's a matter of time.
And it's climate related? Is it warming up, that kind of thing?
I mean, it's definitely climate related, I would imagine, because it's environmental. So
It was introduced it was first noticed in 2002 in the Great Lakes. It was brought in, they believe, by pallets on ships from Asia. There's nothing here to prevent it from spreading, and now it's on its way.
How
It-
bad is it?
It'll wipe out all your ash trees.
Mhm.
And it's green ash and yellow and white ash, and it's 3 to 5 years once it comes, but by 10 years from now, you'll have no ash trees.
Is that including, so that's the tribes, like basket making
Well,
source?
that's part of the
Yes,
issue
it's a
as well,
big deal.
but they're into the brown and black ash, which are a smaller
Oh.
tree, but those are still gonna be impacted, so.
Is there any action items on the list that might,
There are. Yep.
that this might fit in?
We're just trying to get the word out on right now
Yes.
with the committee, and to come up with a plan that we can present. We've been given an outline, which is pretty comprehensive, and Suzanne's done a lot of great work with it. We're just trying to come up with a plan to present to the council. The problem with budgets is most councils don't want to budget for anything like that because it's not a crisis yet. But what happens is when you budget $200,000 for a removal or whatever, it never comes in at 200,000. Once it's here, it's gonna be 280 or 320 or whatever. It's gonna be a chunk of change. Some of the trusts around here are finally getting onto their lands with it, but we're just trying to come to an inventory right now.
So, yeah, so we're trying to actually come up with a plan to find, we're looking at resources to do an inventory, to also find out, we know, let's say you can save some of these trees by treating it. So you can inject it with, I guess, an insecticide that will prevent that tree from ever being, impacted. So and there's a certain radius that you can do. So if you do a certain perimeter around a certain area, you can actually protect the internal part. I'm not a forester and I'm just learning all of this, but those are things that we can maybe utilize in, and if this is our plan B, because I really like plan A, but and I like plan B, but it is something that would be very important for Bucksport, and it could have long-term consequences to even the way, not just the cost to the town, but also the aesthetic. We're spending money to make things beautiful, and we don't want the trees that are already here to be.
It feels like, Alan, could we if we had the bandwidth, could we sort of prepare for 2 proposals and nail it down to 1 at the end?
Sure, we
Does it
can,
make sense to have all of the work done for both ideas?
sure.
Because learning from last time, we didn't know until the last meeting that it didn't work, right? So if we're prepared with 2 plans, all the way up to submission,
Yeah.
and then they say no, we can say, well, by the way, we got idea number 2 already.
I think that's a good strategy. And Suzanne, I don't know if you've received this, I know other members of the committee have received this, and I brought 5 copies here, I have one for you. This is the list, the most current list, we don't know if this will be the list, we think it'll be the list for the next grant round.
I'm so focused on the brown tail moth.
I'll take one, I've
You've
checked
looked at it
It's online.
digitally, right?
I think the important thing too, and you've heard me say this many times, is everybody here know how to use Google Drive. Because that's where everything is.
Yeah, that's where it
That's where
is.
No,
originally
the answer is no.
set up, I can help.
I had to learn, and
You've always been helpful,
I tried
Chris.
to in the past.
I know, you've tried to bring me into the modern times, Chris. I'm not
It's all
sure.
there, it's all there. Thank you, by the
We'll
way.
see, I'm not sure I'll
So-
accept, but thank you, Chris.
I have another question.
Yes.
So when we put this together, and I'm not sure how, and I'm just gonna use my experience because that's the only, to go off of. So one of the things we're doing with this committee is we're coming together for a specific time. And so I've taken the Forester information and then I kind of modified it because I'm not reinventing the wheel for us, for Bucksport. But we're gonna sit together as a team and we're gonna put it up on there and we're gonna go from line to line and we're going to create what we need and make sure everybody's on the same page rather than trying to send it through Google Drive and that's a good thing afterwards, but
Right.
it's really important if the committee is gonna work, if everybody's together, if we're gonna get the information for Plan A, but we need to all come together and look at a document and go line for line and kind of go through that. That would be my recommendation, even we're doing this for the ash borer, and we're coming together, I think, in 2 weeks.
Well,
And
that's open today. Yes, we are. But
Right.
we're probably gonna change it so we can get Monday instead of Tuesday.
Yeah, it is. I just saw an email when I was
Okay.
walking in.
Yeah, because Rich sent it out earlier.
So one of the things that I learned late later in life than I should have, from somebody smarter than me, been writing grants, and maybe some of you know this. It's not with a fun narrative or the photos, it's start with a budget.
It's
So get the budget and then write from the budget, write the narrative from the budget. So, why do you live?
I'm reviewing 800 proposals and I go to the budget page first.
Yeah, okay, thank you, right?
Because that's the disqualifier.
that's why you should have a
That's-
business
that's-
case. Yeah.
Well, no, I say it's the qualifier.
Qualifier. Sorry. I'm done.
So if you, Suzanne and Chris, have done some work and are thinking about what would need to be done, what's the financial need to move this forward, then let's match it up with one of these priorities here. And that's, to me, that's the way of going.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Similarly, with the proposal for non-fossil fuel battery backup, however we want to synopsize, I'll just say
Green, let's say
option A.
Yeah, I'm just saying.
So who is able to come up with some dollar figures for that? What's we've talked about some of the puts and takes on that. That's going to be a really important, again, we need to start with a budget.
So it would be sectioned out, I think, because Chief Gagan would have a budget line for personnel. Then there'd be sort of an element of professional sort of jobbing out sort of assessments, wouldn't there? You would know that.
Well,
better than I would,
so you're talking like, because usually when you're talking about, well, personnel, but you would need, and I can get this, I can get some information as far as what is needed to put a shelter together, but if the chief already, have we had a shelter here in Bucksport?
Yeah.
Okay, so we might already have, a lot of equipment, and that's what's necessary, so we kind of need an inventory, and then what we don't have that we kind of need to know is that's where some costs are. Personnel, who's gonna be working it, so what is the, personnel cost? Whether there's, a lot of times when there are these emergency shelters, it's volunteer from the town. So, because the town is generally closed, I'm talking about emergency, so it could be that instead of them working, in the offices and even they're working at different points at the shelter, so that kind of mitigates costs when it comes to those things. But I will get together, I would be really interested, I think we need the list from the fire chief of what equipment that they use and how a shelter has been set up in the past and what they need, what are the needs are, because he knows what the needs are. And then I will also get some resources together that will help with cost.
Very good. So you get those to Ralph and the committee and to Debbie and me.
Yeah.
And I'll give you my email after this, although you've probably seen it in the email. So the thing I want to point out is that this is very, how do I say this? These grants are startup grants, they're planning grants rather than implementation. So be aware that a plan that sets forth for the town council what would be the ongoing investment that needs to be made to maintain a shelter, or shelter in air quotes, that maintains a facility like this. That's because these grants at $75,000 are not going to pay for implementation.
No, not even close.
Not even close. I mean, one person, half-time, fully loaded salary could be $75,000, right?
They don't, but do grants pay for personnel?
No, see, that's the caveat I'm making. So
Yeah.
it's really important for us to look at this and figure out what are the limitations, what are the constraints, because this is a way of advancing the climate change strategies, and the emphasis on these is planning rather than implementation. So that's just my caveat.
It feels like the ash borer is more aligned with this project.
I wanted to, I found here E4, develop a natural resource and habitat inventory that includes climate stressors and impacts.
Oh, that is definitely,
For the ash borer.
and-
That's also in our other
yeah.
charge that we have, which is one of the only committees that has a charter or whatever you want to call it, assigned to it because it's so recent. Unfortunately, the council has no interest in being members of that, but we can work through that as well.
No, the last person that was here, the newest councilman, says she would be on it.
Well, when they asked them here about a month ago, when they went through the planning process,
But when she
we
came,
asked about it.
yeah, she came to our meeting and she said she would. She came to the meetings.
Read Jen.
Jen, yeah,
Well, that's good news.
yeah, she said she'd be on the committee.
So Emily very helpfully has pointed out.
I'm on 4 committees.
Yeah, E4 you said.
Emily has very helpfully pointed out E4. I'm looking further here. This may be somewhere within your ambit, F16.
I think there's stuff in here that we can use. I've looked at it
Right.
today and thought.
Increased community level resilience to mosquito-borne illnesses. You know, that's very much related to, anyway, I interrupted Chris. Go
No,
ahead.
that's fine. I think I think we can find a lot of things in here that we can use for that.
So let me add, I think we're up to 4 tasks. Would somebody be willing to look at this and meld that with what the Conservation Commission and what those of you on this committee who are interested in this, how would this fit? What are the relevant strategies? And again, what would be the budget for this? Thinking that we have a cap of 75,000. I mean, that would be a very helpful exercise, because that would do exactly what Tracy is suggesting. That would give us a head start for being ready for the grant application. If we knew exactly what this would entail, preparing this plan, who would do it? I mean, would this be contracted outside to somebody? That's typically what's done. So,
Go ahead.
Tracy?
I just have a technical question,
Yes.
Ellen. Are we do we have to go through the public process again? Or are we grandfathering last session? Like, we're sort of coming up with a second idea now, but does that have to go through the public meeting that we had last year and all of that?
You can opine on that. I think that there was always the conception that you, who were appointed to the committee, would use the best information that was available as it became available. So, I mean, somebody else can opine differently, but I see the work of your group now expanded as a continuation.
I agree. I wanted to be sure we didn't get dinged.
It won't be dinged by the state. What you do as a municipality is your decision. So, but I think you've said you see no problem with this being simply a continuation.
Not at all. No problem at all. For you guys, it was just that part of the eligibility piece was that we heard from the public on their thoughts about ideas or needs, and we went through that process.
So I will say that the application will have added credibility, and if you, as a committee, hold a session and gather public input about that before the grant application goes in. We record how many people were there, what they said, take photographs. That really makes a nice application.
I mean, the trees did come up in that public, if you remember.
Mhm.
I've forgotten the name
They
of
did.
the citizen that mentioned it. So it did surface in the meeting, maybe not specific to the ash borer piece.
We have some vestigial justification for moving forward.
And I do think the 75,000 is probably more in line with what we're doing with the ash borer, the emerald ash borer, because when you come to having inventory, and then also if there is a mitigation, there were some ideas that we're throwing around to, help citizens decide if they want to take the tree down, and, if they, different things. So, but I'm gonna focus on, you're gonna get just so I know what we're doing, you're gonna get with the chief on the information, I'm gonna contact on the generators, and then Chris can, can look through this and maybe find the,
I'll go in there and find some stuff on it.
Yeah.
Because we were also doing some other things there as it relates to recreational use around Silver Lake and those kind of
Yep.
things, which I
What was the
know.
one you said, Emily? What one?
E4.
E4, I'm willing to look through it as well.
yeah.
Yeah, I think that my professional opinion is that Plan B actually has more strength than Plan A. Because I think just listening to all of the complications of doing facility, as eminently valuable as it is, it's a little farther afield from this than the ash borer and the stressors that our vegetation face and what that means. So I think in my mind, if I were you, I would flip the priority and really focus on that, because I think it would be a stronger application with a greater likelihood of success, and I'm all about success.
Yes, Don.
Agree that we've got a couple of proposals that sound reasonable tonight so far. The complications with the church generator thing and the minimum of the, and $75,000 only gets us some bare infrastructure. However, it would be a startup situation that perhaps the town may choose to put some resources in, if to have an emergency place to go, because they apparently want out of the school at this point. So maybe with the counsel of Sean Gagan and others, that we could approach at some point the council as to how does this fit with your. Could the town then become an active partner with us if we can get you some startup stuff for that kind of thing? So I think I wouldn't just write off because of cost. The shelter and 75,000 ain't gonna get us nowhere. I think it also could fit into a long-range town plan that may get us in a good direction.
I think, Don, you've identified a very important point, which is that all of these grants are meant to be startups. They're meant to be a springboard, leverage, use whatever verb you want, to getting something, and that's a very important caveat.
Shelters generally, I was just, they are, hundreds of thousands of dollars. So I agree. I was just thinking, I wonder if there's other, I don't know what the grants, we don't know as you started this whole conversation about what this, what's happening, but maybe state grants that have to do with shelters and safety, emergency shelters, not.
Your economic development director knows more about that than I do. So.
And but I agree with you about success, and we, maybe it is to flip it because we want to be successful, and the whole idea is to, this is about climate. This committee is about climate. So it was funny because when we first started talking about shelters, it surprised me because I was trying to think, how is shelters related to climate? And then that when you brought up the green generator, put it this way, I just want you to understand how expensive generators are. The generator, because I was standing up a new 911 center in Milwaukee, it's a very large center, it was $20 million to rehab the generator that we already had. $20 million. That was what to rehab. And so that was a very large generator. And the one in Seminole County that we used, that was a $10 million one. And that was substantially smaller, but not to the size of this. So they are expensive. And that was just a regular gas generator that also fed off of batteries. So.
John.
Yes, John.
The quote that I got over a year ago now, when I contacted Chief Gagan and Reverend Remick on this, who were the ones who kicked this around, and whose idea this was originally, was $30,000 or something like that for the church, which a traditional gas generator. So that's a major difference from what you're quoting there. I don't know what the situation is or anything like that. We would need, again, the input of these gentlemen who have talked and have approached this for a while. So again, we maybe need to have them come in if we want to go pursue that. Is to bring them in on this if we want Plan A to be discussed any further.
Yeah, Peter.
Gordon, do you know what the heat source is at the church right now?
Sure, it's oil, isn't
Don't know.
I believe it's gas.
Natural gas?
it? Natural gas? Okay.
So, because it makes a big difference if we're planning for an event where the gas is out.
Well, yeah.
That was one thing that public safety had talked about as well, and I was thinking about that related to the biofuels as well. He was talking about the availability of gas in certain disasters. I do know for B20, I'm pretty sure that's what Coastal Energy has.
Right.
But for a mix that is more pure, where, how far away is that?
Well, the church also has heat pumps, but the heat pumps are, the primary heating requirement is not taken care of by the heat pumps.
So so usually what happens when you're talking about a public safety, and this is what we're talking about, emergency, and I don't know in Maine, honestly, I'm new to Maine, but they have to meet criteria, so you're not talking about a generator that's going to run a house or run a church that, because it's not for safety or for compliance of people who are gonna be housed there under emergency circumstances. So there are different types of generators. So if the generator that you might get a Gen X or Generac, that for my house or for my business is gonna be like the one for it's like $30,000 if I wanted to do my whole property or whatever. But it's gonna be different, and there's different criteria because like these walls, and you might have them here, if there's a red outlet, that plugs into the generator. So not everything is going to serve the generator. And so they have to meet emergency standards for those of the difference in the compliance of the generators. So, and it could be, maybe it's not as much, I'm just telling you my experience, and these are big, big facilities, and they house a lot of important, like 911 centers and things like that. But there is a compliance behind it that has to meet for people who are staying because they're being evacuated for housing under emergency circumstances.
Was this from a conversation with public safety? Where you got the 30,000, that was
From Peter Remick, because they had somebody come in. And I don't know how fancy the study was, how sophisticated the study was, or at all. But that's where I got that figure from.
Yeah, my guess is, that's what, mine was 20,000, I think, from my home. I think it's probably just a run-of-the-mill Generac whole building
You
quote.
couldn't have paid
Yeah.
$20,000 for a Generac.
Did. Well, credit card paid for it,
Wow.
yeah,
Oh,
installed.
okay, we don't need to,
I'm sorry. May I just say one other thing that has been a concern of mine for some time now, which is I've been involved in crisis training. I've been involved with emergency things through my employment at the hospital. I've laid out on tarmacs, had blood, fake blood, done all of that stuff, and they were always failures, gross failures, for a lot of reasons. But what disturbs me most here is, I think Dawn asked Sean way back when about a community plan, an emergency plan, and if I'm not mistaken, it's sort of like undercover because of terrorist threats. Is that any truth to that story? There is no.
parts of the emergency plan are not intended for public distribution.
There it is.
He came to talk about the ones that were able to be discussed.
Okay, so where is that material now? Is it online at the town? Does the town have that? Because, the reason I say this, all plans are useless after, usually, especially in war, any of those things, they pretty much go out but I just don't know that the town has released a plan to the public. I have a place across from me, the Erie Center, North Bucksport. I've been told that that's part of the plan, to use the Erie Center for whatever reasons it might happen. It could be whatever. But it has no backup power. If the power goes out, you got 100 people potentially in there with no heat. Who knows where these plans are, current plans, and how is what this group is trying to do address some of those current plans that the town has, taking out the terrorist stuff and all that. Where is that plan that I can see that? I'd like to see it.
So when we had the conversation, this is a public meeting, so our voices are being broadcast as far as I know. This is a public meeting. And every meeting that we've had has been a public meeting, and when the emergency folks from the county or the town have spoken to us, they were aware that they're speaking publicly. So even the details of the use of the schools as shelters has not been detailed. We know the town has some school buildings and they don't want to detail that publicly. We also know that there's the problem of the conflict of the use of the school building if it's being used to house the school children versus a place for other people to come. So we're working necessarily with information that doesn't include the detailed information. And I think if we got to a spot where the detailed information was necessary, we just have to consult with the folks who have the need to know that and deal with it that way.
Thank you. I find that totally irresponsible, and I think it's a shame to the citizens of Bucksport that that goes on. That's where I stand on it.
So Maine has what's called a sunshine law. So any any governmental document is a public document unless it satisfies one of the criteria for an exemption. And there are roughly a dozen exemptions. And
Thank you for letting me have my say. I appreciate it. Thank you.
is there anything else that we need to talk about today before we call it quits for the day? We've generally kept these meetings to an hour, and I expect we'll try to do that in the future.
I mean, I like that we've narrowed down to two trajectories and can focus our energy on sort of resource gathering and information gathering to get those budgets rounded out and needs rounded out.
Alan had identified 4 tasks at the moment. One was information on biofuels, another was information from the governor's office related to previous funding for shelter-related types of things. Another was to get some shelter information from public safety. And another was to get some, I just wrote down forestry information. I'm not sure exactly who was pursuing the forestry information dealing with the ash borer.
We can do it.
Chris and Emily.
Yeah, we're gonna look on this outline, right, Emily? As to how we're gonna do that. You're on the committee too, right?
Yeah.
So one of
Thank
the,
you for being on everything.
For cohesion.
I'm sorry, Robert.
the suggestion that I have is to, Rich is gonna send me everyone's email. I'm gonna send you all an email. Oftentimes when I deal with emailing groups, I put people's emails in blind copies. That prevents them from being misused, but it also prevents the threads of thank you for this information, which is nice, but it fills up everybody's inbox. So if there's a need for communicating a thread, I think I'm gonna start it with blind copies, and if necessary, we'll open it up after that, but I'm happy to forward material if you need it forwarded.
Would you define blind copies for me,
Blind copy
please?
on an email means I send emails to 10 people. As blind copies means that you get an email, if you're on one of the 10, and you see your name, but you don't see the names of the other 9 people. And if you reply or reply all, you're just replying to me. And so that's my preference for that. Any final words?
Yeah. So
Yes, Peter.
when we have more information about what the system that we're gonna need is, I can help on the technical specifications. I do solar and battery for grid scale.
Great.
We
I know I'm-
scored. We got like a public safety person and an engineer
Great,
and
Waste
a.
of time.
We've just like
And nobody-
boosted the committee. This is exciting.
Okay. I call the meeting adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Very much.